Get off my goddamn property before I call the real police, not whatever mall cop bullshit outfit you're pretending to work for. I was standing on my dock in the middle of Lake Harmony, Montana, shotgun resting across my forearm, staring down two men in fake sheriff uniforms who'd just broken into my cabin. The taller one, mid-40s, gut hanging over his belt, radio clipped to a vest with no actual department insignia, took a step back. "Sir, we're conducting an authorized inspection under Clearwater Estates' HOA directive. Clearwater doesn't own this island. Never has. Never will." I pumped the shotgun once, ejecting a shell I deliberately left in the chamber. It hit the wooden planks with a brass clink that echoed across the water. "You've got 10 seconds before I decide you're armed intruders on private property. Montana's real friendly about castle doctrine." The second man, younger, nervous, hand hovering near pepper spray, he definitely shouldn't have glanced at his partner. "Maybe we should..." "Yeah, maybe you should." I took another step forward. 5 seconds. They scrambled off the dock so fast, one of them nearly fell into the lake. Their boat-white pontoon with Clearwater Lake Patrol stenciled on the side like they were actual authority roared to life and peeled away, wake slapping against my pilings. I stood there, watching them disappear toward the eastern shore where the McMansions rose like monuments to bad taste and worse intentions. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, so pure it felt like swallowing gasoline. This was the third inspection in 2 weeks. The fifth confrontation in a month, and I was done playing defense. Because 3 years ago, my uncle left me this island, 2.3 acres of pine and granite sitting in the middle of a pristine mountain lake with one instruction written in his will: don't let the bastards take it. And I'd just realized exactly who the bastards were. When I inherited the island from Uncle Ray 3 years ago, I thought it was the kind of gift that came with strings attached, like a vintage car that needs constant repairs, or a dog that bites strangers. But Ray's will was simple. The island is yours, Marcus. Keep it wild, keep it free, and for God's sake, don't let any HOA touch it. At the time, that last part seemed like paranoid old man rambling. Ray had been a wilderness photographer, spent 40 years documenting Montana's backcountry, and bought this island in 1981 with money from a National Geographic contract. He'd built a modest cabin, registered the land as an independent parcel, and made damn sure it was legally bulletproof. The paperwork was immaculate. Separate deed, separate tax parcel, water rights, mineral rights, environmental clearances dating back decades. The island sat exactly 847 feet from the nearest shore, just far enough to be outside any municipal jurisdiction, just isolated enough that most people forgot it existed. I'm Marcus Chen, 36 years old, former wildland firefighter, current outdoor education instructor, divorced father of 2 kids who think their dad lives in a treehouse. I'd spent the last decade fighting fires in California and Idaho, watching forests burn while people built houses where forests used to be. The island was supposed to be my reset, a place to breathe, to rebuild, to remember what silence sounded like. Lake Harmony isn't huge, maybe 60 acres of cold, clear water cradled between the Mission Mountains and the advancing sprawl of Missoula's exurbs. When Ray bought the island, the entire lake was surrounded by national forest and a handful of old ranches. Now, the western shore was still pristine, but the eastern side had been transformed into Clearwater Estates, a luxury development where houses started at $1.2 million and came with lifestyle coordinators, wine cellars, and HOA covenants thicker than most Bibles. I didn't think much of it at first. Different worlds. They had their manicured lawns and Tesla charging stations. I had my solar panels, rainwater collection, and a composting toilet that actually worked better than most suburban plumbing. Coexistence seemed possible. Then the kayakers started showing up. Same families, same time every weekend, paddling circles around the island, taking photos like it was a tourist attraction. I didn't mind initially, hell, I waved a few times. But I started finding things. Clearwater Estates brochures floating near the shore. drone footage uploaded to neighborhood Facebook groups with captions like, "Our beautiful lake," showing my island as part of their amenity package. One brochure had an aerial shot with my cabin digitally removed, just empty island, pristine and available, like I didn't exist. Still, I kept my head down, paid my property taxes, maintained the old water level dam that technically kept the lake stable, even fixed the public boat launch on the west shore when the county ignored it for 2 summers. I wasn't causing problems. I was just living. Then she showed up. It was a Saturday in June 2024, early evening, when I saw the pontoon boat approaching. Sleek, new, expensive, the kind of vessel that screams, "I have opinions about thread count." 3 people on board, all dressed like they were attending a TED Talk about sustainable wealth. The woman in front wore a cream-colored blazer over Lululemon leggings, designer sunglasses perched on perfect highlights, clipboard in one hand like a weapon. She stepped onto my dock without asking permission. "Marcus Chen?" she called out, smile bright and lethal. "I'm Jennifer Bradford, president of Clearwater Estates HOA. This is Todd, our Community Development Director, and Stephanie, our legal liaison." I set down the fishing rod I'd been repairing. "You're trespassing." Jennifer's smile didn't waver. "We're here to discuss the future of this property, specifically how it fits into our community's long-term vision." "It doesn't fit into anything. It's private property. Mine. Not part of your HOA." Todd, mid-30s, fraternity president energy, polo shirt tucked into khakis, chuckled like I'd made a joke. "Actually, the lake itself has been incorporated into Clearwater's recreational jurisdiction. That includes any structures built on or within the waterway." "That's not how property law works." Stephanie stepped forward, all business. "When the community voted to expand our boundaries, it included the lake and all associated parcels. Your island, while charming, represents an unregulated structure on a shared resource." "Shared?" I looked around at the empty water. "I'm the only one living on this lake. You people just moved here 3 years ago." Jennifer's smile thinned. "Mr. Chen, we're not here to fight. We're offering you an opportunity to be part of something bigger. Clearwater represents progress, community, property values. Don't you want your land to benefit from that?" "My land benefits from being left alone?" "Unfortunately," Jennifer said, pulling a document from her clipboard. "We've identified several violations. Unpermitted dock extensions, questionable septic systems, solar installations that haven't been reviewed for environmental impact. The HOA board has voted to require compliance inspections. You don't have authority to inspect anything. You don't own the lake. You definitely don't own my island." Todd jumped in. "Environmental concerns override property boundaries. If your systems are contaminating the lake, they're not. Everything I've built has been permitted, inspected, and approved by the county. I've got documentation going back to 1981. Jennifer's expression shifted, still smiling, but colder now. "Then I'm sure you'll have no problem cooperating with our inspection process. We're just trying to protect the lake. For everyone. Protect it from what? From people who think rules don't apply to them." She handed me a letter, official looking, printed on Clearwater Estates letterhead. "This is a formal notice. We'll be conducting our first inspection next Tuesday. I hope you'll be cooperative." I didn't take the letter. Let it flutter to the dock. "Don't come back here without a warrant signed by a judge. And even then, bring a lawyer." Jennifer's smile vanished completely. "Mr. Chen, I'd hate for this to become contentious. We're prepared to offer you a very generous relocation package. Perhaps even help you find property more suited to your lifestyle. I'm not relocating from my own land." "Then I suppose we'll see you in court." She turned without another word, stepping back onto the pontoon. Todd and Stephanie followed, neither looking at me. As they pulled away, Jennifer called back over the engine noise. "Enjoy your weekend, Mr. Chen. Things are about to get complicated." I stood there watching them disappear toward the eastern shore, toward the uniform rooflines and matching mailboxes of Clearwater Estates. Something cold settled in my stomach, the same feeling I used to get right before a wildfire jumped containment lines. This wasn't about property values or environmental concerns. This was about control. About someone deciding my island would look better without me on it. I walked back to the cabin and pulled out the metal filing cabinet where Ray had kept every document related to the island. Birth certificates of ownership, survey maps, permits, water rights certificates, environmental impact studies. At the bottom, folded and yellowed, was a handwritten note in Ray's blocky script. Marcus, if you're reading this, someone's trying to take the island. Don't let them. This land is sovereign. No HOA. No exceptions. Fight like hell. Ray, I sat there for a long time, holding that note, realizing my uncle had known this day would come. And he'd left me ready for war. The Monday after Jennifer's visit, I drove into Missoula and spent 6 hours at the county records office. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, whether Clearwater had any legal standing, any paperwork that could justify their claims. What I found was terrifying in its precision. Clearwater Estates had filed a petition with the County Planning Commission to reclassify Lake Harmony as a community-managed recreational ecosystem. The language was bureaucratic slush, but the intent was clear. Claim jurisdiction over the lake, then use environmental regulations to control everything on it. The petition included aerial photos of my island with red circles around my dock, solar panels, and cabin. One section read, "Unregulated private development continues to endanger long-term ecological stability and restricts public access for Clearwater Estates residents." Unregulated. I'd spent years getting every permit, every approval, every inspection certificate. My name was in the county registry more times than the mayor's. I pulled everything I could: Clearwater's development permits, HOA incorporation documents, expansion petitions. Then I found something interesting buried in a zoning variance request from 8 months ago. A company called Mountain Vista Holdings LLC had applied for permits to build eco-luxury wellness lodges on Lake Harmony. The application included architectural renderings showing floating cabins, a private beach club, and dead center, a luxury villa on my island. The application listed Jennifer Bradford as community liaison and was signed by someone named David Bradford, president of Mountain Vista Holdings. Jennifer's husband. I printed every page, drove straight to a law office downtown, and hired the toughest property rights attorney I could find. Her name was Rosa Gutierrez. Late 50s, sharp as a scalpel, with a reputation for destroying HOAs in court. She'd been practicing in Montana for 30 years and had personally prevented at least a dozen land grabs by developers disguised as community improvement. "This is good," she said, scanning through the documents. "This is really, really good." "Good? They're trying to steal my island." "Yes, but they're doing it stupidly." "This isn't a legal HOA expansion. This is real estate fraud disguised as environmental protection. And that David Bradford connection, that's a smoking gun." "So what do I do?" "Nothing. Let them make the next move. If they file a lawsuit, we'll crush them. If they try enforcement actions, we'll get injunctions. In the meantime, document everything. Every interaction, every trespass, every threat. And Marcus," she looked at me seriously, "be careful. People trying to steal land don't always play by rules." I drove back to the island that afternoon. As I pulled up to the dock, I noticed something new on the Eastern Shore construction equipment. Excavators, pile drivers, concrete trucks. They were building something, right across from my island, without any warning, without any permits that I could see. I grabbed binoculars. The construction crew wore Clearwater Estates uniforms. They were building a massive public pier, not just a dock, but a full recreational facility with lighting, benches, and what looked like blueprints for a kayak rental kiosk. I called Rosa immediately. They're building on conservation land. That entire eastern shoreline is zoned for low-impact use only. Permanent structures require state approval. Send them a cease and desist. I'll draft it tonight. The letter went out the next day via certified mail. Return receipt requested. It detailed every zoning violation, cited Montana environmental law, and threatened immediate legal action if construction continued. They ignored it. Construction accelerated. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of a boat engine. Not recreational, purposeful. I walked outside to find a white pontoon circling the island Lake Watch stenciled on the side, 2 people with clipboards taking photos. They circled 3 times, slow and deliberate, photographing every angle of my property. When I waved, they ignored me. When I shouted, they kept recording. I installed security cameras that afternoon, motion sensors, trail cams, covering every approach. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. Because if Jennifer Bradford wanted a war, I'd make damn sure I had ammunition. The harassment escalated quickly after that. It started subtle kayakers, accidentally landing on my beach, claiming they thought it was public access. I'd politely redirect them. They'd leave, but it happened daily. Always the same families from Clearwater. Then came the noise complaints. The sheriff's department called 3 times in 1 week anonymous reports of loud parties and disruptive activity on the island. Each time a deputy had to boat out, confirm I was alone reading a book, and leave with an apology. "Someone's jerking you around," the deputy said on the 3rd visit. "I'll make a note in the file." But the calls kept coming. The deputy stopped apologizing, started looking annoyed at me, not the callers. Then my mail started arriving, opened, not torn, carefully opened and resealed, like someone was checking for legal documents. When I complained to the post office, they blamed rough handling. One morning, I found my dock's mooring cleats unscrewed, not completely, just loose enough that the next storm would rip the whole structure apart. I caught it before damage occurred, but the message was clear. The fake inspectors came next. 2 men in polo shirts, clipboards, official-looking badges. They claimed they were from Montana Lake Quality Services and needed to test my septic system. "Show me your credentials." I said, "Sir, we're authorized by the county. Show me a warrant or get off my property." They left, but I looked up Montana Lake Quality Services. Didn't exist. I ran their photos through reverse image search. Both men were employees of a private security firm called Apex Resource Management. The same firm listed on Clearwater Estates vendor payments. I sent everything to Rosa. She filed a harassment complaint with the county. But harassment is hard to prosecute when it's a dozen small incidents, none individually criminal, all collectively suffocating. That's when they cut my power. I woke up one morning to dead solar panels. Not broken, sabotaged. Someone had severed the main conduit with wire cutters. The cut was clean, professional, hidden under the panel housing where it wouldn't be immediately visible. Repair cost, $3,400. Insurance called it vandalism. Police called it possible animal damage. I called it war. I installed backup systems, secondary power, hidden wiring, trail cams covering every inch of the island. And I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to the bed. 2 nights later, the motion sensors went off at 2 a.m. I grabbed the bat and my phone, pulled on boots, and headed outside. Someone had poured gasoline on my dock. I could smell it before I saw the dark liquid pooling between the planks. They hadn't lit it yet. They'd just left it there, a threat, a promise, a preview. I called 911. Sheriff's Department sent a boat. They took photos, collected samples, filed a report. The deputy looked at me with something between pity and exhaustion. "Mr. Chen, you need to understand, this is going to get worse before it gets better. These HOA people, they don't quit. And unless we catch someone in the act, there's not much we can do. So I'm just supposed to wait until they burn down my cabin? I'm saying, be careful, document everything. And maybe talk to a lawyer about getting out. I'm not leaving my own land. Then get ready for a long fight." He wasn't wrong. The lawsuit arrived 3 days later. Thick envelope, certified mail, filed by Clearwater Estates HOA against Marcus Chen for unlawful occupation of community waterway resources. They weren't claiming they owned the island. They were claiming the island was an illegal structure on navigable waters and should be removed under environmental protection statutes. Rosa called me within an hour of receiving her copy. They're going for demolition, not eviction, destruction. They want the cabin torn down, the island restored to natural state, and you barred from reconstruction. Can they do that? Not legally. But they can tie you up in court for years, bleed you dry on legal fees, force you to sell just to afford the fight. I'm not selling. Good. Because I've got a nuclear option. She'd been digging deep, and she'd found something beautiful. Mountain Vista Holdings full business registration, showing David Bradford as president, Jennifer Bradford as secretary, and here's the kicker, using the Clearwater Estates HOA office address as their corporate headquarters. The HOA and the development company were the same entity. Every environmental concern Clearwater raised wasn't about protecting the lake. It was about clearing the island for their luxury villa project. Rosa filed a countersuit. Fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate theft, abuse of process, and she subpoenaed everything: HOA meeting minutes, financial records, email correspondence, architectural plans. The court date was set for 8 weeks out. In the meantime, Rosa got an emergency injunction freezing all construction and prohibiting any HOA enforcement actions. For about 10 days, things went quiet. No boats, no harassment. Even the construction stopped. I should have known better. Quiet is when people reload. The fake cops showed up on a Tuesday morning. I was cleaning the gutters when I heard a boat motor, looked up, and saw 2 men in dark blue uniforms that looked almost like county sheriff gear, except the patches were wrong, the badges were too shiny, and neither had name tags. They walked onto my dock like they owned it. Marcus Chen, we're here to conduct an inspection under HOA directive. You'll need to vacate while we assess the property. I climbed down from the ladder. Show me your warrant. We don't need a warrant. This is HOA regulated property. No, it isn't. And you're not cops. You're private security, pretending to be law enforcement. That's a felony. The taller one, mid-40s, overweight, trying to project authority he didn't have, put his hand on his belt where a real cop would have a gun. He had pepper spray. Sir, we're authorized to use necessary force to ensure compliance. Touch that pepper spray and I'll throw you in the lake. They didn't leave. They walked past me toward the cabin. I followed, phone out, recording everything. You're trespassing. I'm documenting this. Leave now or I'm calling the actual sheriff. One of them stopped at the cabin door. Tried the handle. It was locked. He pulled out a pry bar. That's when I called 911. 2 men impersonating law enforcement are breaking into my property, Lake Harmony Island. I need real deputies now. The dispatcher heard the urgency. Units are en route. Are you in danger? They're about to be. The taller fake cop forced the door open, stepped inside my cabin, started rifling through drawers like he was searching for drugs. I walked in behind him, still recording. You're on camera. Everything you're doing is felony trespassing and burglary. He turned around, face red. We're conducting official business. No, you're committing crimes. That's when I heard boots on the dock. Heavy, fast, purposeful. Then a voice I recognized. The fuck is going on here? It was Kyle, former Marine, current wilderness survival instructor, my closest neighbor on the West Shore. He'd heard the 911 call on his scanner and brought his boat over at full throttle. Kyle walked into the cabin, took one look at the fake uniforms, and his expression went from curious to dangerous. Where's your badges? We're authorized. I asked, where's your fucking badges? The younger fake cop bolted. Just ran, jumped off the dock, splashed into the lake, and started swimming toward their boat. Kyle grabbed the older one by the collar before he could follow. You're staying right here until real cops show up. The man tried to pull away. Kyle put him in an arm lock so fast I barely saw it happen. The guy yelped, went down to his knees, and stayed there. You good? Kyle asked me. Yeah, thanks for the backup. No problem. Always wanted to arrest a fake cop. The real sheriff's deputies arrived 15 minutes later. They weren't amused. The fake cop was cuffed immediately. The younger one was caught trying to dock his boat at Clearwater's pier, also arrested. Both men worked for Apex Resource Management. Same security firm Clearwater had been paying for lake patrol services. The sheriff personally called me that evening. Mr. Chen, this has escalated beyond HOA harassment. We're opening a criminal investigation into Clearwater Estates and whoever's behind these tactics. In the meantime, you should know you're within your rights to defend your property. Montana law is very clear on that. I don't want to shoot anyone, Sheriff. I'm not suggesting you do. I'm saying if someone breaks into your home again, you have options. And we'll support you. That night, Kyle stayed over. We sat on the dock with bourbon and shotguns, watching the lights of Clearwater Estates glitter across the dark water like a enemy encampment. You know this isn't over, right? Kyle said. Yeah. They're going to try again. Probably worse next time. I know. You ready for that? I looked at the cabin Ray had built. At the island he'd protected for 40 years. At the freedom he'd fought to preserve. I'm ready. The article hit the local paper 3 days later. HOA security arrested for impersonating officers, trespassing on private island. There was a photo of me and Kyle standing on the dock, arms crossed, looking like we'd just won a bar fight. Within 24 hours, Clearwater Estates issued a statement claiming the security team had acted outside authorized parameters and that the HOA was committed to respectful community relations. Damage control. Vague. Apologetic. Email chains between Jennifer Bradford and her husband David discussing timeline for island acquisition. Budget documents showing HOA funds being funneled to Mountain Vista Holdings for consulting. Architectural plans. With my cabin digitally removed and replaced with a luxury villa. And the nuclear bomb. An internal memo from David Bradford stating, once legal resolution of the current occupant is complete, Phase 2 can proceed as planned. HOA board president has confirmed removal is progressing on schedule. Jennifer had been using HOA authority to steal property for her husband's development company. It wasn't community protection. It was real estate fraud disguised as environmental activism. Rosa compiled everything into a binder the size of a phone book and hand-delivered it to the county prosecutor's office with a formal criminal complaint. The prosecutor called me personally. Mr. Chen, this is one of the most blatant cases of corruption I've seen in 20 years. We're opening a criminal investigation immediately. 3 days later, the FBI got involved. Turns out, using HOA funds for private business ventures crosses into federal wire fraud territory. Jennifer and David Bradford were both subpoenaed. So was every member of the Clearwater Estates HOA board. The county froze all HOA accounts pending audit. And the court hearing? Jennifer showed up with a 3-piece legal team. Designer, blazer, perfect hair, and that same dead smile. Rosa showed up with evidence. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled with Clearwater residents who'd finally realized their HOA president was a criminal, reporters from 3 counties, and a handful of environmental groups who'd filed amicus briefs supporting my case. Jennifer's attorney, slick guy named Martin, with a voice like a politician reading children's books, started with a passionate speech about protecting shared resources from rogue development. Rosa let him finish. Then she stood up, walked to the judge's bench, and dropped that massive binder with a thunk that echoed through the courtroom. Your Honor, every word Mr. Martin just said is a lie. And I can prove it. She laid out the evidence methodically. The emails showing conspiracy, the financial records showing embezzlement, the architectural plans showing intent. The memo explicitly stating the goal was removing me to build a luxury villa. When she pulled up the rendering, my island with my cabin erased and replaced with a 5-bedroom villa complete with boat lift, the courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. Miss Bradford, were you acting on behalf of the HOA board or your personal business interests when these communications occurred? Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it. Her attorney jumped in, tried to object, claimed the documents were out of context. Rosa smiled. The context is fraud, Your Honor. Real estate fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft of property. The judge called a recess. When he returned, his face was granite. This court finds sufficient evidence of criminal conduct to refer this matter to federal and state prosecutors. All HOA enforcement actions are permanently enjoined. All lawsuits against Mr. Chen are dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Bradford, you are hereby barred from any HOA activity pending criminal investigation. He banged the gavel. Jennifer's face went white. Half her board members stood up and walked out immediately, muttering about lawyers and liability. Outside the courthouse, Rosa lit a cigarette with shaking hands. She overplayed her hand. Now we just watch her burn. I looked back at the building, at the reporters swarming the entrance, at Jennifer trying to escape through a side door while cameras followed. It's not over yet, I said. No. But the hard part is, now comes justice. She was right. The federal indictment came down 6 weeks later. Jennifer Bradford and David Bradford were charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, embezzlement of HOA funds, and about a dozen other counts that carried serious prison time. The state added charges: criminal impersonation for the fake cops, arson conspiracy. They found evidence Jennifer had ordered the gasoline incident, and unlawful surveillance. The trial took 3 months. I testified. Kyle testified. A forensic accountant walked the jury through how $340,000 in HOA funds had been diverted to Mountain Vista Holdings through fake invoices and consulting fees. A whistleblower, former Clearwater board member who'd resigned in protest, testified that Jennifer had never disclosed her financial interest in Mountain Vista, had pushed through enforcement actions without board votes, and had explicitly stated her goal was clearing the island for development. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. 12 years federal prison, 3 years state, sentences to run consecutively, 14 years federal, 5 years state, both ordered to pay $800,000 in restitution and fines. I sat in the courtroom gallery when the verdict was read. Jennifer's face was blank. David didn't show emotion. They were let out in handcuffs. I didn't celebrate, just exhaled. Clearwater Estates HOA was dissolved by court order 2 months later. Remaining board members entered into settlement agreements, most selling their homes before facing lawsuits from angry residents who'd been lied to. The illegal pier was torn down. The construction equipment disappeared. The lake watchboat was seized as evidence. My island stood, scarred but standing. I rebuilt the dock with composite materials. Upgraded the solar system. Added better security. And I put up a new sign, hand-carved cedar, stained and sealed. Private property. Sovereign parcel not subject to HOA vote or control visitors welcome, just knock first. The local paper ran one final story. Island owner prevails as HOA leaders face prison for fraud. The photo showed me and my kids fishing off the dock, my dog asleep in the sun. One headline just read, "He won." A few weeks later, a group of law students from the University of Montana came out to interview me for a project on property rights. They brought cookies. Someone had frosted with, "Thanks for fighting, Mr. Chen." I gave them a tour, told them about Uncle Ray, about the years of paperwork, about standing ground, when everyone said to give up. One student pointed to my sign. "So, does this mean no one else is allowed here?" I smiled. "Nah, just means you gotta ask first. Respect goes both ways." They left with notebooks full of quotes about sovereignty, property rights, and why some lines are worth defending. Epilogue. It's been 18 months since the trial. The island is quiet again, peaceful in the way Ray always intended. I still get kayakers circling sometimes, but now they wave respectfully. Some ask if they can land and take photos. I usually say yes. Show them around. Let their kids fish off the dock. The western shore is still pristine. National forest, unchanged. The eastern shore, where Clearwater used to be, is slowly returning to something more human-scaled. Several families tore down the McMansions and rebuilt smaller, simpler, no HOA, no covenants. just neighbors. Jennifer and David are in federal prison, due for release in 2035 if they behave. I don't think about them much. Kyle still comes by most weekends. We fish, drink bourbon, watch the sun set over the mountains, and pretend we're not getting older. My kids love the island. They're talking about taking it over someday, carrying on what Ray started, what I protected. That feels right. Generational. Like land should be. Sometimes at night, when the lake is glass smooth and the stars are so bright they look fake, I sit on the dock and think about that first confrontation with Jennifer. How close I came to just walking away, selling out, taking the easy path, and I think about Ray's note, "Fight like hell." I'm glad I did, because some things are worth fighting for, not because they're valuable, not because they're profitable, but because they're yours. And nobody, no HOA, no developer, no bureaucrat with a clipboard has the right to take what's yours through intimidation and fraud. The island taught me that. Ray knew it all along, and now it's mine to protect, mine to pass down, mine to keep wild and free, exactly as it should be. The end.